think accountability is so powerful, if not the most powerful aspect of healing, because it really forces you to look in the mirror. And that's what we always talk about. That's what the best relationships do. They give you a mirror to yourself. And if all the time in every relationship, you're always going to point out what everybody else needs to be doing and fixing, and then you're never looking back at yourself, it's like, well, how are you supposed to grow? And how is that person supposed to be in an intimate relationship with you if they always have to feel like they're the issue? Welcome back to the Triggered AF podcast. This is the number one place to explore the triggers that shape our lives with raw honesty and unfiltered conversations. Okay? Get ready to laugh, cry, and discover something new about yourself. You can keep spiraling or deal with your triggers. It's totally your choice. If you're with us today, it just might mean you're ready to deal with yours. So let's tap, tap, tap on in. Hello.
Hey, Danny, how are you?
I am well. I am well. It's a little rainy here in the Sunshine State, but I'm just gonna be the sunshine today.
Ew. We love a good sunshine, okay? We love a good
Yeah.
sunshine.
Somebody has to do it. I know it's such a hard job, but
Listen,
I'm your man, your woman.
it is such a hard job for sure, but I'm so glad that we have you holding down the anchor for all of those in the Sunshine State. And they didn't even know that you was doing it, so that's even better. They didn't even
Right,
know.
right. It's okay. I don't need any praises. I'm just doing my job. Okay.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So now today's conversation is about something that not only Danny and I talk about often, because it's something that we have found that people like to avoid a whole lot of, and that is accountability. Now,
Oh, that sounds like a test word.
it is, we just cursed a couple of people out. My bad, y'all, in advance, but prepare yourselves,
We don't
okay?
like that. The peoples don't like that. They don't like
I don't like
accountability.
it.
Nobody does.
I
It's too
mean,
hard. It's too much work. Who wants to be accountable?
right? Like,
Get
especially when
somebody else to do it.
get somebody else to do it, especially when you're in intimate relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic relationships. It's something about the ships that people just don't like to be accountable. It's some
And
ships.
black people, we really don't like ships.
We have a traumatic, at least Black people in the U.S., we got some trauma around ships, ships
The
swimming.
blacks don't like the ships.
We don't like the
They don't
ships.
always end well for us. We have trust issues.
Listen, historically, it has not proven to serve well for us. So,
No, but I mean, all jokes aside, we came up with this conversation because we were having a discussion, as we always do off air, about how easy it is to point out the flaws of your partner or your friends, or to always point the finger at everybody else and talk about all the
Mhm.
things they're not doing or the things they are doing, and it's very uncomfortable to point the finger back at yourself and be like, well, what role do I play? Or how am I not showing up? Or what can I be doing better? And we especially think that humans with vaginas have an extra hard time um, taking accountability, especially in romantic relationships. We have had men tell us that women do not apologize. Women do not say that they're wrong. That's just something we have a hard time with. So, we're hoping that this conversation can help give us some tools and some tips and some ways to navigate what it means to be accountable.
Yeah. And then if you can figure out how to be accountable in your most intimate relationships, then that same energy, that same tool, that same know how, the goal is to make it so that it permeates, throughout the other relationships in your world, in your universe. Because the one thing that I have learned about accountability is if you are a human who is looking to grow, to change, to advance, then you're going to have to be accountable. Accountability is the
Yeah.
catalyst to growth, to change, to all of the best stuff. But it is on the other side of accountability, and that means you will have to, first things first, tell yourself the truth.
Every
Now,
time. Well, no, I feel like we just need to change the name of the podcast to that. I think we
just
say
the
that
truth.
every episode. No, tell yourself the truth, okay? Because I think we say that every podcast, but we were even speaking about it, that it's not so common for people to do that. Alicia's always like, "Oh, I like to tell myself the truth." I'm just like, "Well, I hope you know that that's not a thing for everyone." Most people don't like to tell themselves the truth because the truth
Yeah.
is uncomfortable, or sometimes the truth they're telling themselves is not steeped and rooted in reality. So it's very easy to think you're telling yourself the truth because that's what makes you feel better. But are you having any biases, or are you
Mhm.
filtering it through a lens that is not really based in reality,
Yeah.
so that by the time the truth comes through to you, it's no longer the truth?
Yeah, it's your truth, but not the truth. And it's okay,
Mm,
right? Like, we're humans and we're going to many times filter our experiences through not only our traumas, but also our experiences, right? So it's not just trauma latent. Sometimes you're filtering a truth or a situation or a circumstance through your experience. You may not know, like, hey, there is another option, or there is another way that this thing can go. And so when it comes to telling yourself the truth, what I have found is have you someone in your life who can speak to you with radical honesty. We don't believe, and we've said it before, but we don't believe in brutal honesty over here, because if I care about you, why in the world would I want to be brutal to you? And that's talking to yourself too, right? So it's not someone who's brutally honest with you, but someone who can practice radical honesty with you, where they can say it in a loving way, like, hey,
yeah.
I know you may have meant it this way, or I know you may feel like it's this, and also, or but also, in all honesty, from my purview, it may have appeared to look more like that. You saw this, but it's really looking like it's that. Is it possible that you are maybe leaning into an experience that you've had previously that causes, that brings up some stuff for you? Can we
And
explore
then,
that?
right, and are you projecting it? So the first
Yeah.
step is to, obviously acknowledge that, okay, the results are not resulting in my life. Maybe it's time to take a look inside. So that is the first step, is telling yourself the truth, meaning becoming introspective, taking a look inside, seeing if there are some things within that are manifesting on the outside world that you're not fond of, that you don't want to have happen, but for some reason you just can't seem, like, if you're in a space and you feel really stuck and you feel like you've done all the things and you've tried all the things, that's when it's time to start looking within. Like, okay, it might be me. Like, if every man I attract is treating me like this, if every job I get, I keep having issues with the managers, like, at some point it can't be everybody else. It has to be you.
Yeah.
And I want to feel like it's always you. It's always how you're perceiving. It's always how you're moving. It's always how you're showing up. And I feel like once you can take that kind of accountability, you gain so much control over your life, as
Mhm.
opposed to giving your power and giving your life over to other people and saying that it's their fault or they're the reason why these things don't happen. If you always kind of bring it back to you, you'll find that you're going to be so much more determined to figure it out and to
Mhm.
seek the answers, because you know that you're in control more than you've been behaving like you are. Because I do think there's so much out of our control,
Absolutely.
but we have to get to a space where we start controlling the things that we can and stop automatically defaulting outside to other people and other circumstances. Like, yes, you were born in this space. Yes, these are the people around you. But now what can you do about it to create the life that you really want, as opposed to playing the blame game?
Exactly, exactly. And that's in and throughout everything. If you say, well, I was born in this space and I live in a really terrible neighborhood and this is that and that is that, okay, what activities can you sign yourself up for that are in a different neighborhood that would allow you to place yourself in a different thought pattern or in a different energy? One of the things that my sister and I say all the time is when we're driving through or walking through certain neighborhoods, there's literally an energy that you can feel walking through certain
Yes.
neighborhoods, and then as
So
soon as you
true.
get to a different area or a nicer area, you can literally feel it shift
Isn't
immediately.
that wild? I say
It's
that all the
wild.
time when I'm driving. I'm just like, it's so, I don't think we realize just how intentional neighborhoods are.
Uh huh.
It's random, but it's so, I mean, I said it to my husband all the time. I'm just like, it's so interesting that in this on this specific road, there's all these gun stores. Like Dave Chappelle has a joke where he's like, you know, you're in the hood because it's gun store, liquor store.
Yeah.
And then in other neighborhoods, it's so different, and nobody stops to ask why.
Yeah.
Like, why do the plazas here look like this? Like, even down to the parking in certain neighborhoods in like a Publix, why is the parking so uncomfortable? It's almost as if it's designed to frustrate you and
Yes.
to keep you vibrating low,
Hmm.
because there's no reason that it has to be like this when there are examples of another way that's better.
Yes.
So it's like, why is this here when there's another option available that you know is better,
Yeah.
that is being implemented elsewhere,
Hmm.
but for whatever reason in these spaces it has to be like this? That's
Yeah.
so intentional.
It is incredibly intentional. And so when it comes to being accountable, you may not be able to change your location immediately, right? That might not be something you can do, but what you can do is make it so that you're spending time in places where the thought process is different, the mentality is different, the mindset is different, the conversations are different. If the people who you are around only primarily talk about other people, get you some new friends. It's not saying that they're terrible people. It's just saying if growth is your desire, if change for the better is what you want, then you will have to be accountable to say, hey, who I have chosen thus far might not be in alignment to where I want to go. What does it look like to Google some free activities or some activities that you got to pay a little something for? We got to get out of the habit of, well, I don't want to pay anything or I don't want to spend anything. Like, yo, you want to keep yourself trapped? Keep thinking that you should never have to invest in things. But that's not the topic of today's conversation. We're going to hop back onto what we're talking about. But get super, super clear about, all right, is this the truth or is it my truth? If it's just your truth, then okay, honor, like, all right, well, in this moment, for this circumstance, all I can handle is my truth. And since all I can handle is my truth, let me get around some folks who I can trust to have radical honesty with me, whether it is a coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a really good friend who you trust, who knows like they're going to give you what's real without trying to break your spirit, so that then you can do the next thing, right? Is to lovingly release your ego or invite them to the back seat. 'Cause I don't believe in destroying or your ego, because there is some value in ego, but invite them to the back seat. They can't be in the passenger seat or the driver's seat, because your ego is what will mess you up every time, because it's going to tell you right when you're wrong, and it's going to tell you that you good when you're not.
Right, because your ego is there for protection, right? And to keep you alive. So it will do that at any cost. And we've had that conversation when we spoke about our lower selves with Lola and Elsa.
Listen, Lola and Elsa, those are some
That
good
is an
girls.
episode you have to. If you've never heard that episode is so good. Go listen to that episode. I think it's from like season 6,
Don't
and
make
it's
me lie.
about our lower vibrating selves, Lola and Elsa. It's in the title somewhere. Go find it. But it's one of those things where your ego is going to cocoon you as much as possible. So it's not going to want you to take risks. It's always going to validate your nonsense or the things that you think are true that make you feel better about yourself. It wants you to stay nice and squishy and comfortable right where you're at. So you do have to kind of, it is kind of like like Alicia says, we don't like to call it like an ego death anymore, because that's not always going to serve us, because you do still need that protection, because a lot of times we go from one extreme to the next where now we're just so vulnerable and so open, we're like a crab with no shell, and that's not smart either, right? So you want to know how to come out, how to retreat, how to use your ego to your benefit,
Mm-hmm.
to propel you, as opposed for it to be a crutch and keeping you stuck to where you're at. So if you can, like Alicia said, move the ego to the back, the maybe, put a clank clank on her real fast, so that you can elevate and be your higher self, that you make more sound decisions for who you're trying to become. Because every time your ego is going to say, now we're good right where we're at, everything is fine, it's everybody else. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to help in your accountability journey. I think accountability is so powerful, if not the most powerful aspect of healing, because it really forces you to look in the mirror. And that's what we always talk about. That's what the best relationships do. They give you
Mm-hmm.
a mirror to yourself. And if all the time in every relationship, you're always going to point out what everybody else needs to be doing and fixing, and then you're never looking back at yourself, it's like, well, how are you supposed to grow? And how is that person supposed to be in an intimate relationship with you if they always have to feel like they're the issue? Like, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to be in a relationship with someone that doesn't think there's anything wrong you? Like, there's just nothing wrong. Like,
Like
you're
you're
just,
perfect? Wait.
yeah, like there's nothing you want to work on. There's nothing you think that you could be contributing. Like, I like to ask my husband, like, what am I doing to maybe elicit this? And it's not to always put the blame on yourself and not have the other person take accountability, but there needs to be sometimes questions asked about, like, is there something that I'm doing? And
Yeah,
this is not for anyone in like a very abusive relationship. I'm
that's
saying
different.
that in a healthy relationship where there's an exchange going on that's healthy, where you can ask the person, is there something I'm doing to trigger you? Is there something that I'm
Mhm.
doing to bring this out of you that I can stop doing, that I can be more mindful of, because it's bringing you to this place, or it's bringing you to this space that makes you behave this way. In abusive relationships, you should not be asking, like, what am I doing, or what's wrong with me? Like, that's
Yeah,
not what we're talking about. This is specific to healthy spaces, or
exactly.
healthier non-abusive spaces.
Yeah, exactly. It's knowing the space you're in, and that too goes back to our first point, which is telling yourself the truth. So now, after you told
Right.
yourself the truth, you have invited your ego to sit in the back seat, not the passenger side or the driver's side, but in the back seat. And then the next piece too is all right, we've done all of our pre-work. Now what is it exactly that is not working? Because once you're clear
Mhm.
on what it is exactly that's not working, and hey, here's the thing, you may not know, right? Like there are some real things where I'm just like, I can't figure out what's not working. Like I'm telling myself the truth. I got my friends who are honest with me, who telling me like what the real is, and it's still not working. It's acknowledging sometimes that your level best might not be the best for the situation,
Mm.
circumstance, event, or opportunity. And coming
That is
to
so true.
coming to that awareness, dear Lord, can hurt.
And just acknowledging when you need help, like when you were speaking
Yeah.
about maybe seeking out a therapist or a coach. Like, I know for me, when I get to a space where I just honestly feel mentally ill, like, and it has such a bad connotation, but I think there needs to be some normalization around acknowledging when you just don't feel mentally stable. And that's like
Yeah.
a thing in a period. And for some women, it's when our cycles are on, or whatever it is, where it's not a laughable thing. It's like a real thing where it's like, wow, I cannot think through this. I cannot process this. I cannot
Mm.
like move through this the way I usually do. Calling in the reinforcements and seeking out the help. If you don't have it in friends or family, then learn to invest in yourself, like Alicia said, and hire that help so that you can not stay stuck there. You don't have to be like this. You don't have to keep staying in that space. So I love what you just said. It's so important to just honor that and realize that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and people say it all the time, well, I did my best. Sometimes your best isn't good enough. And I know that sucks. And it feels really, really, really shitty when you say it out loud. But baby, sometimes your best is not good enough. And you will have to honor that fact and then make adjustments to say, all right, I'm not so good at this or this particular area I can't seem to get. So, what does it look like, too? Like Danny was saying, bring in reinforcements, bring in some help. And then, after you have acknowledged that, all right, my best might not be good enough, or let's say your level best was actually good, what actions, because that's how we rounding this on out, what actions do you need to take that will get you to what you actually want and desire? That's the
Yeah.
key. That's how and why accountability works so well, because you acknowledge first the truth, not the truth that is your truth, but is the truth, right? You acknowledge what the truth is. You get you some folks who can help you if you can't, tap into reality for real, for real. Because listen, I love a good Delulu, but not when it comes to my personal growth. Then I got to steep myself back into reality. You
Yeah.
have you some folks who will tell you the truth, then release your ego or invite them to the back seat. Now it's all right, let me take a look, is it my level best or is it that I still was not the best? Figure out which one. And then this
Have
last.
you ever been in a situation like that? Like, what's something that you feel like you've had to tell yourself the truth that was very painful and uncomfortable, but it was you holding yourself accountable so that you could level up, or so that you could move from your level best to the best as far as that situation? Anything you could think of? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I was just like, I wonder if she's had that recently, or just like something that sticks out to you.
Definitely putting me on the spot. But sure, I will say I am much better being a visionary now than I am being an executioner.
Really? And I've always felt like you are an executioner.
In my previous life, I have been a
You have lots
phenomenal.
of lives.
Listen,
You got about nine. You like a cat. You got about
literally a
nine.
whole cat. In my previous life, I used to be great at executing. The older I have become, I am
Oh,
not so good at executing anymore. I would much
I did
rather.
not know this. I'm learning this in real time too. I did not know this. And you're like, was that hard to come to terms with?
It hurt my heart. I cried when I realized it.
Oh my God. That's so interesting.
Yeah. It was working on a project, like a huge project that I'm working on now, and I
Yeah.
realized how difficult it was for me to get lock and step. And what I
Yeah.
came to at doing my own, again, telling myself the truth, not my truth,
Yeah.
but the truth. It was like, damn, I'm really not good at executing anymore. I am great with all the ideas and even some of the stuff that
Why do
we
you think
come up
that
with.
is? Or why? Like, what was the shift, or what brought that about? Like, why do you think that is?
The more I desire to live in ease, the less hard work I want to do. And executioners, they take the load and the weight on their back, and they are
Yeah.
drivers. They drive the car, they get through the stumbling blocks, they, rev up to be able to hop over, barricades that are in place. And I just no longer have the energy for all of that. They play the politics well to get through the border patrol. I don't want to do any of that anymore. And because I don't want to do any of that anymore, it is becoming increasingly difficult for me to execute. I could visualize and be the visionary all day long, but executing,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's much harder for me now.
Wow, wow. That is something to be acknowledged because I did not.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to restructure our whole business together because you are the executioner in this dynamic. So we're gonna have to figure that out. All right,
Yeah.
we
It's it's
put
it's
that on.
it's increasingly becoming so much harder. And I'm
You know,
watching
I you know
myself.
I think I've noticed it actually. If
You
I'm
have
thinking
to have
about it,
noticed it.
I think I've noticed it, but I thought that it was because you just have so much on your plate that you're just like shifting what you're executing, not that you're struggling with executing altogether,
I'm
you know?
struggling.
Like I was just like, oh, like you just have a lot on your plate. There's just a lot going on like in my life. So like we
Mhm.
give each other a ton of grace, maybe
Yes.
too much grace, because I think we need to like get some shit done,
We
but we
need to.
don't because we're like, oh, grace, 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 grace,
I think we
grace,
might need
grace,
to be like,
grace.
hey yo, let's take some of this grace, put her in the back seat because we got that. We got the grace part.
We just, I'm giving you grace. It's like the grace isn't getting us anywhere. Like,
We're gonna have to release the grace. Invite her to the back seat too. She can sit next to
right along with
Ego.
our ego. Yeah, we're gonna have to give the ego some company with some grace because I think we got too much
We
grace.
do. I think we went a little. See, guys. This also too is accountability, right? So it's honoring that. I'm not so good at something that I was excellent at previously. The more I
Right.
grow and evolve, and then it's like,
Yeah.
the way we've been doing this thing is not. It's not getting us the results we're wanting. Our actions are not producing the desired results. And you know a
Yeah.
tree by the fruit it bears. So since we are not bearing the type of fruit that we want, it's all right. What changes do we need to make? We literally mirrored it for you in real time, what it looks like. And it wasn't this long, drawn out, oh, woe is me, you're a horrible person type conversation. It was a dang, I
No.
have noticed that. Okay, we need to shift, adjust, and we're going to talk about it later. I already know.
Right.
We're going to have a full discussion.
Yeah. Right. Like, what can we do? Because it is uncomfortable and it's not always the space you want to be in.
Yeah.
And sometimes acknowledging and taking accountability is going to force you to change.
Yeah.
And I know that that is scary and it forces you to make other decisions. It
Mhm.
forces you to have to like level up or to push harder, or it creates more problems sometimes before it
Mm.
creates the solutions.
Yeah.
So trust me, we totally get, because now I'm like, oh boy, Alicia has execution problems. It means I have to do something about it. So it's like it. it shifts things, it changes things, it creates discomfort. And we're not crazy about the discomfort as
Yeah.
humans, just naturally. There's nothing wrong with you because you're not comfortable with discomfort. That is
Yeah.
a very normal human attribute. And
Yeah.
I would say most of us are like that. And whoever isn't like that worked really hard not to be like that. And
Really
it's
hard.
constantly working. And that's the last piece about accountability. It's a muscle you have to work. You're
Yes.
constantly going to be having to hold yourself accountable. It's not like, oh, I held myself accountable that one time in 96. Like, no, you have to hold yourself accountable because new things are going to come up, like Alicia just showed, right? Where she's been a certain way for all her life. And now she's like, that way doesn't feel the same to me anymore. I'm changing. So as you change and evolve and grow and you enter new spaces, you enter new circles of friends, you're going to constantly be having to find ways to hold yourself accountable to keep shifting and moving. I want to say like that accountability piece is like the wheels on your car. Like it's what's gonna, like, you got to keep that, you got to keep them tires going. You got to make sure that everything is up to par and is functioning at a high level because you cannot move and you cannot grow without holding yourself accountable. So that you
Absolutely.
can make the decisions and make the moves that you want to make. Without accountability, not saying it's impossible. I'm sure there's people who do it. Clearly, we have very dark people in high places, but I think the journey is going to be better and easier. And once you get to certain destinations that you want to get to, you can be more at ease because you know that you really earned the right to be there.
Yeah, and going back quickly to that metaphor that you used in terms of the wheel, remember if you are not taking care of your wheels, if you're not making sure that you get your alignment, making sure that okay when the tread gets low, that you replace, and sometimes it's not always replacing all four, sometimes it's replacing one because this
Yep.
one can't continue on with the rest of the four. Sometimes there's a nail that gets in it, but it's being aware of what is happening, paying attention to when that tire light goes on so that you can make sure, like, okay, this one way is not working. Let's shift to do it this other way. And then if none of
Yeah.
those are working, all right, let's find somebody to bring in some reinforcements. Like honestly, I think that is one thing that we did do, and that now somebody else does our social media because we realized as good intentions that we had,
That
we
ain't
could
happening.
not get it done ourselves. And it sucked having to be honest to say, I can't get this done the way I need to. Let me bring in some reinforcements. So we really, really hope that this particular conversation was incredibly valuable for you. You can also actually go to triggeredafevents.com, which helps you with the process that you have to go through to change, because accountability is just that. It requires change. And so if you are having a difficult time, it is our 7 changes pack. It is so, so good. You can get it now while it's in pre-order. Y'all, I promise you, when we start sharing some of the snippets of what we go over in that particular pack, it is going to be game changing. So head on over there now to triggeredafevents.com. But Danny, where can we stay connected with you?
You can stay connected with me at the Danny Bordeaux. Bordeaux is Bouardeau. You can also still go to triggeredaf.com, triggeredafpodcast.com, sorry, so that you can stay up to date with the latest and greatest episodes. Go back and listen, re-listen, share with a friend, share with a family member. Don't hesitate to leave us a review on the podcast. DM us, let us know what you want us to talk about, anything that we haven't covered yet, or anything you want us to revisit, any guests you want us to have on the show. Like, we love the engagement. So please, please, please never hesitate to slide in our DMs.
Go ahead, slide away. And you can stay connected with me at Alechia Reese. That is ALECHIAREESE on and across all platforms. And I just want to thank you so, so much for taking the time to join us this week on the Triggered AF podcast. Again, like Danny said, make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts and also on YouTube. And we will see you soon. Bye.